A little while ago, I received an invitation from GB Railfreight to come and look at their Peterborough facility. As a train nut, I leapt at the opportunity. Not literally. The thing is, I don't really get to talk about freight on this channel. Well, not modern day freight. This, combined with other circumstances, led to one of the greatest days of train nerdery I have ever had. So for starters, I got to ride on one of LNER's retro-liveried Intercity 225s. It makes me feel old that these are now getting retro liveries, but sic transit gloria mundi, I suppose. Oh wait, sic mass transit gloria mundi. I'm so clever. At Peterborough, I saw these lads, a pair of Intercity 125 power cars. I keep meaning to do a video on the 125s, just as soon as I've got enough footage. Anyway. I was already doing pretty well on the train geek front, and I hadn't even got to the depot yet. Here are some Great Northern Railway buildings. Still, despite the best efforts of my phone's GPS, I soon arrived at my destination. This is the GB Railfreight Maintenance Hub. This facility is pretty new. The first part was opened in 2021, and the final part should be opening later this year. GB Railfreight is, as the name suggests, a rail freight company that was founded in 1999. Freight has undergone something of a renaissance in recent years. It's the most profitable aspect of Britain's rail network. I know we don't like talking about the profitability of railways around here, but I think it is worth noting. What's more, railways are well placed to take advantage of modern environmental concerns. Basically, it's a question of physics. Steel wheels on steel rails have less friction than rubber tyres on asphalt. A single locomotive hauling 40 or more containers is way more fuel efficient than one lorry carrying one container. And it's cheaper, one engine to maintain, one crew to pay. Lorries can be relegated to short distance trips, taking the loads from the cargo terminal to their final destination. Trains have the edge in travel time over cargo ships too. A train can cover the distance from China to the UK in 18 days, whereas a cargo ship takes over a month. I actually asked about the question of whether there was more freight on the rails in recent years, and I was told yes and no. Britain saw its last coal train a few weeks ago, which is the end of an era that's lasted about 200 years at this point. However, with the rise in online shopping, there's a greater demand than ever before for container trains, and GB Railfreight anticipate this market is going to expand. This is what the maintenance hub is for. Keeping on top of the demand with state-of-the-art equipment. They described it to me as basically a pit stop on the East Coast Main Line, a convenient stopping point on the journey from Felixstowe and Southampton. It's built on the site of what was once a mail terminal, but we don't send mail by rail anymore. Once it's fully complete, there will be entrances at both ends. There is a maintenance facility for locomotives, where they can be serviced and refueled, and one for wagons, where problems can be easily diagnosed by computer and parts swapped out. We've come a long way from the days when a bloke hit the wheels with a hammer. Modularity is the key to maintenance on the modern railway. Rather than ferret around inside a locomotive, these days you can just identify the area of the engine or wagon that's giving you grief, lift it out and put a new one in. Send your train off and work on the actual problem in your own time. Once the train is fueled up and fixed up, it can be sent out the other end of the depot. I must admit that I knew very little about modern freight operations, so this was an incredibly useful tour for me. But there was more to come. The facility doesn't just deal with maintenance, but training, and so they gave me a go on their simulator. The simulator is built from the cab of a Class 66. The Class 66s are the backbone of modern freight operations in the UK, and I understand they're pretty popular elsewhere in Europe too. Actually, I got to poke around inside the real thing while I was looking around the depot, and that was extremely awesome. The story of how GB Railfreight came to have a Class 66 cab in their offices is a curious one. It was originally part of locomotive 66521, named the Eco Express. In June 2012, the locomotive was passing Loch Traig when the driver spotted something looming out of the rain, a boulder dislodged by a landslide. He applied the emergency brake, but it was no good. The engine hit the obstacle and went careering down the bank. The location was an isolated one, so it took some time for a rescue crew to arrive. At GBRF headquarters, they received the grim news that the driver had lost his leg. Upon arrival, officials learned that the driver had actually had his leg amputated some years before, and in fact his injuries were fairly minor. That being said, they couldn't find the prosthetic, so technically he had lost his leg. Anyway, he was airlifted to hospital. That left the question of what to do with the locomotive. They estimated that the cost of recovery and repair in such a location would be more than the locomotive was actually worth, and that was assuming the locomotive could be repaired. So it was cut up on site. Appropriately for the Eco Express, its number 1 cab was recycled. Class 66s are an American design built by General Motors. In North America, locomotives typically only have 1 cab, whereas in Britain they have 2. The number 1 cab is per the standard American type. The number 2 is the smaller one squeezed onto the other end for the European market. The simulator, appropriately enough, had the East Coast Main Line loaded in. This was a little bit surreal to me, because I've been up and down that line more times than I can count, not least that morning. It was a little eerie to see stations I know and use rendered in virtual reality.
Oh, that's Ali Pally.
Let me tell you, my friends, driving a Class 66 is no picnic. The simulator was set for a light engine move, that is, an engine with no wagons or coaches. This is a lot easier than handling a full train. The actual controls were simple enough, no more complex than a car, really, and considerably less complex than a steam locomotive. But a train is not a car, and this thing is chock full of safety features that you have to stay alert for. You might have heard of the dead man's switch, that is, a pedal that has to be kept pressed down so that you know there's a driver at the controls. Well, not only that, but every so often an alarm goes off. You have to take your feet off the pedal, then press them down again. There are AWS ramps on the track. These sound another alarm, and you have to cancel that within a very short space of time, or the brakes come on and your engine grinds to a halt. I wasn't quick enough the first time. I was told that, had I had such an incident in real life, control would be on the radio demanding to know what's up. They're even experimenting with a device that monitors the driver's eye level. That's the long, narrow thing at the bottom of the windscreen there. There is also an emergency stop button that just slams all the brakes on right away, no questions asked. There is, of course, a zero-tolerance policy on drugs and alcohol, and that's industry-wide. Fail a drug test and you not only get the sack, but you get suspended from the rail industry for 5 years. Why so serious? Well, this simulator showed me that not only are there a lot of safety features, but there's good reason for them. Depending on the variant, a Class 66 weighs between 125 and 130 tons. The train behind it could weigh up to 4,000 tons. That's a lot of momentum. That's not something that comes to a stop right away. The simulator throws obstacles and difficult weather conditions at you, and I can confidently say that I did not manage to avoid a single one of those obstacles. Here's me hitting a van, followed by a crowd of onlookers. I hit the emergency stop button as soon as I saw the van. Now, I take responsibility for the van, but the onlookers should have seen what was what. That's on them.
I guess this is also why they say you shouldn't use your phone while you're driving.
I also hit a cow earlier, although I didn't get a shot of that. On the bright side, I might have no future as a train driver, but I could still get a job at McDonald's. The moral of the story is, don't mess around on the railway track because a train takes a long time to stop. It took a light engine ages from a fairly low speed, and a full train is going to take considerably longer than that. So that was my day with GB Railfreight, and very enjoyable it was too. But the train nerd shenanigans weren't over, because when I got back to Peterborough station, I saw this lad. This is a London, Midland and Scottish Railway Class 5MT, better known as a Black 5, and it had come here with a rail tour. These are one of my favourite classes of locomotive. They're just a very good design. They lasted all the way to the end of steam on British railways, and they could do just about anything from shunting to express trains. And in line with the theme of the day, they were very much at home on heavy freight. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I must thank my new friends at GB Railfreight for their kind invitation and for putting up with my inane questions. I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot, so really this day was a total win on all fronts. Unless you are a cow. I would also like to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your support. You are the extra cab to my American locomotive. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.